I'm excited.
Go ahead.
I'm excited to introduce Charla Sackman this morning for a talk about planning for success in meetings. Charla is the Prairie County Extension Agent in Eastern Montana, and she's been in that position for 24 years. So Charla has a lot of experience and insight into running meetings in this career she's had out there. So Charla, thank you for being here today. I will turn it over to you.
Excellent. Right. Well, as Katie said, I'm Charla Sackman. I have been the Prairie County Extension Agent for a long time now. So some of the groups that I work with, just to give you some context, I am a county extension agent, and so the Weed Board and Fair Board are a couple of county-operated boards that I work with. I also am a member of a local nonprofit group and then in other community organizations. And so as I thought about this training, just trying to glean maybe from some of those experiences that I had and what really makes a meeting work. I've had experience with meetings that worked great and also experience with meetings that maybe didn't go like I had planned. And so I'm trying to capture maybe some of those lessons as we move forward. If you were on last week's webinar, if folks know how to raise their hands or give me a thumbs up, how many folks participated in last week's webinar? Yeah, so a number of you did that. Tara asked a question at the beginning of her presentation, just thinking about planning, thinking about a meeting that did not go well. Like, how did it feel? What were some of the characteristics of that meeting? And how do we want to avoid that type of an experience in the future? And so we're going to flip that question on its head for today. And if you could just respond in the chat box, think about a meeting that you went to that was really productive, that went really well, that you felt really good about. What were some characteristics of that meeting? If you could drop that into the chat for me, that would be great. So I'm seeing things like clear goals, on time, active participation, positive discussion, prizes. Well, that's exciting. Engaged, kept moving. Everyone was heard, focused. So those are that's all the ideas that I want us to think about and carry forward as we move forward. So how do we get to that point, and how can we plan to be able to do that? So as I thought, I kind of came up with 4 different ideas that help us maybe achieve that meeting that really is a positive experience. So we'll talk about each of these more specifically. So the goal of the meeting, having an intentional plan, making sure we get buy-in from folks, and positive logistics. All right. Having a weird, give me 1 second for technology here to advance my slide. I don't know what happened. All right, there we go. So goal of the meeting. So I think this is a really important thing for you to think about very first thing. So what do you hope to accomplish at this meeting you're going to have? Is the real purpose just to gather information so that you're better informed to make decisions? Have you already gathered that information and now you're trying to sort through that and prioritize those ideas? Are you ready to make a decision and you're trying to move forward from discussion that's maybe been going on for a while? Or is it just a regular business meeting where you're updating people of the activities of your organization and moving forward? So if you can think about these things, that will help you design the structure of your meeting so that you're able to accomplish those goals. So once you know that, I propose that you be intentional in your planning. And some things that I think about when I talk about being intentional are thinking about the format of the meeting. It could just be a regular business meeting where you're all sitting around the table and having a discussion like you do every month or however you meet regularly. But maybe you need to change the format of that meeting to accomplish a certain purpose. Maybe you need to have a special committee meeting that's outside of the regular organizational meeting time to do that. Maybe it needs to be something that's a little more interactive and draws in some extra people. Just really thinking about the right format to be able to present the information that you're trying to accomplish. Think about your audience. Who is going to be there at the meeting? Do you have some generational differences in expectations? I noticed in the chat when we put forward before, there's lots of people who like meetings to be on time. They like meetings to be brief and to the point. And there are a number of people who come to meetings for a social aspect. They just really want to have that time to engage and visit with their neighbors. And so how do you balance the needs of those different types of folks? Well, you have children present at your meeting. Are there accommodations made for that? So just really thinking about your audience and who's going to be there so that you're able to plan the meeting to best meet those factors. And then anticipate problems or barriers. Do you have difficult personalities that you know are going to be at the meeting? Maybe the personalities aren't necessarily difficult, but maybe there's some personality conflicts within your group that you know you're going to have to navigate your way through. So think about those kind of things. Is your group size going to be really, really large? So you're going to have to manage a lot of people participating in the meeting. Or on the converse, maybe you know you're not going to have a great turnout at this meeting, but you need to keep moving forward. So how do you work with that small group and then work forward towards making sure you have adequate input from a larger group? And then think about the flow and transitions. So maybe you know you're going to get stuck on a topic and start to talk in circles. What's your plan to move forward out of that kind of round and round discussion that so often happens in meetings? So if you keep hanging on this series, the next couple of sessions will really give you some great ideas and tools to be able to help move that discussion forward. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So I thought maybe the easiest way to explain being intentional was just to go through an example with you on what I have done just in planning a meeting. So this is a meeting that we had last fall. We had Prairie County 4-H livestock meetings. So the 4-H Council is the governing body of livestock. We noticed that we were not doing a great job with our new member orientation. We had lots of new people. At the same time, our barn was kind of starting to fall apart. We wanted to talk about just our whole livestock program. We had a lot of new energy and new folks in the program and knew we needed to spend some time on livestock specific issues. So what we decided to do was to pull the meeting out of a regular council meeting and have a special meeting in between council meetings to be able to address this a little bit more adequately and then report back at the council meeting where actual decisions would be made. So that was the format that we used to be able to move forward. So I'm just going to walk through this timeline a little bit. The introduction, I think that's important, is to be able to engage people right off the bat. And so at all of our meetings, we had some sort of a discussion question that we asked. In this was the first meeting we had. We asked, why do you take 4-H livestock projects? And we had both parents and members there, and they all answered that question. And so we got the things like responsibility, being with my friends, really the core purpose of our program and not the details of that. So that's a good way to ground your group in the beginning. And then the next thing I have here is to provide background information. I feel like this is often overlooked in meetings. How many times have you gone as a new person into a meeting and you didn't feel like you could speak up because you didn't know where your place was in the meeting and who had the power and the right to speak in the meeting? Sure, it's a public meeting, it's open to everybody, but it takes a little bit to figure out your fit. And so I think taking some time to really explain who's here, why we're meeting, really inviting people to engage in that discussion or giving them the background information is really helpful. So at this first meeting, we just gave that background information verbally. You know, we realized we could do a better job at orientation. We need repairs on the building, so we just gave that verbally. We had a couple of follow-up meetings after this, and so we would send out notes from the previous meetings and then do a little review time at each meeting so that everybody, if we had new folks join the process, felt like they were engaged in that. And then if you're going to do something different from normal, explain what's going to happen. So we used a technique called rotating flip charts, which is just a discussion technique, which is not normal. We expected to have groups, so we knew we had some people that might have lots to say on the matter, and we didn't want just a couple people controlling the discussion. And so we broke into smaller groups to do that. But you need to explain how that whole process works so people are comfortable participating. And then really think through, so you talked about these issues. Now, how do we move forward? And how do you keep a group moving towards their goal or moving towards some sort of action? So really talking and pushing the group to actually commit to some sort of action and then schedule the next time and some deadlines on when things are going to happen next to help you keep moving forward. The next thing that I think is a really important thing is just buy-in from the folks that are at the meeting. So I think about this from a couple of different ways. So if you want people to be there and to really participate, you need to give them adequate notice. They need to know the meeting's happening so that they can make plans to attend and participate. If they can't participate, is there a way that they can get a hold of somebody who is going to be at the meeting and share their ideas, and you be able to get back to them for that? So adequate notice that the meeting is going to happen. Do you have all the key players in place? Are there experts that could lend some guidance to your ideas? Do you have the right people with the right pull at your meeting? I also think this is something that you maybe need to take some time. I think of our 4-H Council president. She's a real analytical processor type of a person. And so if we're tackling something big and new, I like to have a conversation with her prior to the meeting just to talk about how things are going to go, what we plan to talk about, to give her some time to process so that she's able to contribute at the meeting. Because otherwise, I find that the processing happens during the meeting, and it sometimes can slow things down. So just taking that time to be able to give people the time that they need in order to process information. And then I touched on this before just in my plan. For people to buy in, they really need to have the background information necessary so that they feel like they can contribute and they know the whole story before that they're moving in. So really providing that background information on the issue that you're discussing. Honestly, valuing input would be the next thing I think about is, are you really listening to what people have to say? Are you planning for ways to draw out quieter people? I mentioned in the last slide the technique of rotating flip charts, and you'll see a couple of these pictures are pictures of that. So above value input. So this is a 4-H member that's up there scribing information and ideas, and you can see it's a group of 3 people. So that's a comfortable size for them all to share ideas and to be heard. If we were in a whole room of 25 to 30 people that we had there that day, it's harder for some people to speak up in those situations. So just thinking about ways that you can really actually hear from people so that you're able to value what they have to say. And then finally, providing some sort of a personal connection to the issue that they have. So I think that's important in creating buy-in. You see here, this was a question that we asked, what are we really trying to do in talking to market livestock buyers? So this was just the example that I'm using. So everybody put a sticky note on what was important to them. Why are we even talking about this issue? And that really helps frame and prioritize for later on if you can really get people to buy into why you're talking about the issue you're talking about. The next thing to consider are just the logistics of the meeting. So the place you're going to meet, the space you're going to use, the type of atmosphere that you put forward. So the picture on the left is the first meeting. We had that in our school lunchroom. So as you think about meetings and spaces, there's all kinds of things you need to think about. Is it accessible to the people you have? Is there adequate space to actually meet? how are the acoustics? Can you actually hear? So the benefit of the school lunchroom is it's accessible, it's wheelchair accessible, people can get there, it's a familiar place for people to meet. The disadvantage is the freezers are running, the acoustics aren't super great in that room. But you'll see here, I knew we were going to have kids present at this meeting, because if you're inviting 4-H families, there's going to be younger kids that are along too. So we actually had a livestock activity that these young members were working on, and the space was big enough to allow us, you can see the rotating flip chart station in the back, and then the young members working in the front doing something else. So to allow space for that to happen. The picture on the upper right-hand corner was a follow-up meeting that we have. So this is in the school's study hall. It's on the top floor of the high school. So there's like 2 flights of stairs to get up to there. It's a carpeted room. The acoustics are really good. It's large. There's lots of table space. So those are all great. But we needed to wait to make sure that everybody who came to that meeting would be able to access that space to be able to do that. So just thinking about those kind of issues is really important. There's a whole concept called gracious space that I've just kind of barely hit the fringes of, but really talks about actual physical space and the emotional space that you set up for people attending your meeting. You need to think very deliberately about the environment that you create. How do you greet people when they walk into the room? Do you say hello? Do you smile? Do you invite them to sit down and explain what's going to happen? Those little details really can make a big difference on people being willing to speak up and really feel valued to be able to move forward at the end of the time. We just recently had our Extension annual conference, and I saw a diagram much like this. I don't think I captured it quite completely perfect here, but it struck because I knew I was going to give this presentation. But the idea is at the top of this triangle, there's the issue, the reason that you're having a meeting, you're coming together to discuss something. And the reality of it is that below the surface of that line there's a lot of other factors that go into a meeting being successful, the process that you use and the people that you're engaging with. So the issue is just the tip of the iceberg when you're planning a meeting. And sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in just the details of the particular issue you're talking about, but really the how you present it and how you talk about it can be just as important, or maybe even more important than that as you move forward. So again, the things that I think about in planning for success for a meeting are to think about your goal and purpose of the meeting. So as you're moving forward, you're designing the agenda of the meeting, the flow of the meeting to really accomplish that purpose, to be intentional in the way you plan that meeting. So I literally sit down and think about, from the moment people walk in, what are we going to do first? What are we going to do second? I know this is going to be a sticky issue. How are we going to talk through this? Once we talk through that, how are we going to move forward to the next topic? And that really is an important thing to be able to just help you think about those transitions to move forward. Another point is to get buy-in from the folks that are at the meeting, and maybe even folks that aren't attending the meeting, but you need to endorse the purpose of your group, or give a community blessing for being able to move forward. So think about who needs to buy in and how you're going to gain that buy-in from participants. And then you can do all of that, but if it's just an uncomfortable place to meet, that's not a great thing. One thing I forgot to talk about for place and space, the logistics of the meeting is, are you scheduled right during a meal hour? Do you need to have food available at the meeting? Some people like that, some people don't like that. And so thinking about those just human needs, I know when I was reviewing this presentation yesterday, so it was about 5:30, which is a pretty common time that we have meetings here, and I was hungry and it was hard to concentrate. And so to think about, if people are coming to your meeting that way, it's you need to feed their brains as well to be able to make that work. And so with that is, I would be happy to entertain questions. My contact information is there below, so that's my office phone number, so you can't text on that number. I'd be happy to share that if you want to email with me if you'd like other contact information. But hopefully you've got some questions. I'd be glad to talk through that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Charla. That was super helpful and raised a few questions for me. I'd love to know if there's questions out there. You're welcome to use the chat window. We have about 10 minutes here to dive deeper into some of these topics and questions. Maybe as we give folks a minute to get those in the chat window, I will start with one. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about in your planning how you anticipate kind of issues or maybe those problem personalities.
Mhm.
Wondering if you can talk a little bit more of what does it look like as you're planning for that, kind of and preparing for the meeting? What do you do?
Sure. So I really like to think about any organization that I work with that you're really trying to create a culture of how people interact with each other. And I've had the luxury of being here long enough that I don't run into too many sticky situations anymore, just because I think we've done a good job in the meetings and the leadership that I've worked with over time, and maybe heading things off before they're a problem. So problem things I can think about. So this particular livestock situation, we did have kind of a negative situation that happened at the fair that a family had felt like they weren't treated great. The livestock superintendents just weren't happy with the family. And so it could have been a messy complaint fest. And so we really stepped back from that and thought about, well, what's the root of the issue? And a lot of it was, I don't think we communicated expectations clearly. And so we hadn't done that. That was true. Like how do you know how to act in a certain situation? So stepping back from that in a bigger issue, and how can we do a better job of serving everybody? And so not focusing on the negative aspect of the issue, but on what the solution is on the other side. So really staying solution oriented over time. And people will start to trust that process in time when you focus on the solution rather than the problem. You acknowledge the problem. We had good candid discussions with the folks involved in it, but it's we all wanted to move past and have a better situation, and we had a great fair this year, and folks involved in that, and so it really did help, and we did change some things in our management. So being willing to actually change what you're going to do. So I don't know, that was kind of a long answer to a short question, but.
Great. Thanks. Here's a great question from Andrea. How do you cope with a less than ideal meeting space? How can you improve it?
Well, and I think we're all we're all in that circumstance. Even if you're in a big community, you kind of have what you have available to you, and just do the best you can. So thinking about what is most important at that meeting. So for instance, when I talked about using the school lunchroom, the acoustics are not that great, but having large space and adequate space for kids outweighed the acoustic needs for that meeting. So trying to decide what's more important. If you know that you want to have a more formal atmosphere for a meeting, sticking with something that's maybe more of a formal environment. If you want it to be a casual atmosphere, if it's at a restaurant or more of a community meeting space, our American Legion has a meeting room. Just really thinking about what's most important to the meeting to get people to feel comfortable, I guess and then you just have to do the best you can. It's not very often are you going to have the perfect space.
Great. And I shared the link to the Gracious Space training. There's some
Right.
thoughts in there that you might want to look at. Here's another really good question from Molly. If it's just a regular monthly meeting and there's no quote unquote issue to tackle, how do you keep it interesting, active, productive instead of just going through the motions?
I have used those meetings as an opportunity for education on something that you know is going to benefit. So maybe you could do it on something that's in common with everybody. So if you're meeting around a particular, like I'll use weed board, for example, you could talk about a particular weed issue to talk about something new, just to add something different to the meeting. Or if it's more of a community advocacy type of a group, maybe it's a leadership type of a session. The things maybe you learn here during Big Sky Leadership to Go, you might say, here's some ideas for things that you can use for a meeting. The next couple of meetings, you're going to be talking about facilitation tools, and there's some really great things in there. And so sometimes we'll just pick one of the issues on the agenda to use a more interactive approach to talk through. So it's the regular meeting, but we're going to be really interactive in the way we brainstorm about this topic this time. We don't necessarily do it every time, but just recognizing there's a time just to add something interesting to the meeting. Just reading one, some people process questions for the meeting. I thought that's a great example. How do you avoid the perception that the meeting's rehearsed or decisions are already made? That is a great point, and it really depends on how you approach that issue. And so when I talk to folks, I'm not committing them. We're not making a decision at that point in time. That I really do try to steer the discussion and stay clear of that you really honestly are not doing that. The other thing is, in those groups, I'm not the one running the actual business meeting. And so preparing your officer team, and maybe it's not just one person, but the team of people, so that they're prepared to be able to move forward with the information you might have. So I'm in a unique position here because that's my job, is to help facilitate these groups. If you're just a member, it could just be if you're a co-officer on the board, is to make sure the whole officer team has the same amount of information. But staying clear of those actually making a decision discussions, and more changing that from when people try to make that jump there is to, okay, what information are we going to need to gather in order for us to reach that decision? To move it, keep turning it back to what do we need the whole group to know to be able to move forward. So that's a great question, and a caution depending on who you're talking to and knowing your community on what level that occurs. So great question.
Great. I think we have time for one more here, Charla. Do you have thoughts? Jeff is asking, how might meeting planning differ between a one-time meeting versus a recurring meeting?
Yes. So I don't, that whole timeline, I don't do that for every single meeting that we ever have. So I knew we might have some sensitive issues that I really wanted to make sure that we approached in a very positive, proactive manner. And so I really thought through ways that we could have good discussion without getting bogged down and being negative. So I took much more time to do that. Our regular council meetings, it might be 15 minutes of time that you're really spending thinking about these other things. And a lot of these groups you meet with over time. So it's a known group of people. You don't have to think about, as the special meeting, bringing new people in. So it does take a lot less time when it's routine, but also recognizing when things are getting routine or maybe stale and bland, that it's time to every once in a while inject some life back into those meetings. So just really thinking about after the meeting how that went, and our meetings change sometimes on seasons of the year. We meet at different times during the winter than we do during the summer. The length of our meetings might change, those kind of things. But that can happen in a quicker process for a reoccurring meeting than it does a big issue type of a meeting.
Wonderful. Well, it is the top of the hour. Charla, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. If you want to maybe jump to the last slide there. Michael, you did ask a really good question about best practices for moving on from circular conversations. I guess we're probably going to cover that next week. So I hope you can join us. Allison Costa is going to be on to talk about what are some real tools, strategies you can use while you're in the meeting to facilitate it moving forward. So thank you all for being here, and the recordings will be up in a couple days. Sharon shared those links in the chat, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Thanks. Have a great day.